I don't know if you guys heard about a week or two ago, the designer of this game decided to make a mod that's coming out on the same day the game comes out, December 5th, called the Blue Max kind of mod. Maybe I got the name wrong, but it's called the Blue Max mod or something like this, right? And this mod is absolutely fucking beautiful. I mean, the what he's done to this game, he literally overhauled everything about it. Every counter is like on steroids. It looks beautiful. It's just, I was just like taken back by it.
Why isn't that with the base game? If he's the designer, why isn't that with the base game? Why don't they just release that as the official look?
That's a great question. What do you guys think that?
I have no idea. I just
I don't know. I also don't know.
I think honestly, I think maybe it's like it. I know it. Maybe it's the team that all kind of design said like, look, this is what we did for Strategic Command in terms of counters and all that. Let's do the same thing for World War One, and then let the modders kind of change out the designs for the counters, and the map, and stuff like that. And he was probably like, well, I want to kind of change things up in a bit. And maybe he was just like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to make my own mod and I'm just going to release it. So we could do the vanilla or you could do my kind of take on it. So I think something like that is why he's doing it. But it looks beautiful.
okay. And what was the other thing that you loved about it?
Just this blue mod, it's called a Blue Max mod. And just going through it, they actually released a video on it, I think about a day or two ago. And like everything's redone. Like the map is redone, the counters are done. Basically, the whole game is it's like a whole new game. And I'm just really stunned by the level of passion that he did because he's making the game right now, right? He's making actual Strategic Command World War One. And then he just basically put upon himself to make a whole nother game. And it just fucking wows me.
Yeah, I guess if we're gonna do like a closing thoughts, my I guess two things I would say is one, I do actually, even without the mod that you're talking about, Sean, I do like the way that they represent the map, the way that they represent sort of the way the terrain can unfold. When units entrench, there's a really well done sort of etching of trenches into the hex. The map changes with seasons. There's just something aesthetically pleasing with seeing that front line sway back and forth and the way that they represent all that. I think they do a good job of communicating information with their UI and with their graphics from this type of a game, right? Like
that's a really good point, by the way. That not every game who has done World War One has done good with interface and all that, and this one does it pretty well. So.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there are games with prettier graphics. There's no doubt about that. There are games with more minimalistic UIs, but I think for a war game that's put out, and published by Slytherin and Matrix, I think these guys do a very good job of communicating key information and having the map communicate key information to you so that you have the information you need without digging through 5 menus. There's really only like 2 menus you interact with substantially in this game, and I think it's a still pretty complex game for that. So I think that's one really big positive. The editor, which I guess isn't my second one, but I would say that's pretty cool too. If I was less lazy, I could stop my bitching and I could go, modify the scenario to have slightly fewer units and see how it plays out and see if I enjoy that. So I could do that myself, which is pretty awesome. And the second thing that I would say is there is something about the strategic command system that's just appealing to me. The way that they manage supplies, the way that you can operate units. I think I guess the second thing that I'd really harp on is I love the operation movement command. What that is you can any unit that is on a rail line, you can operate, which basically means spend a little bit of money and you can send it anywhere there's a rail line, assuming you have there's a contiguous front line or a contiguous rail line. And so rail lines are represented on the map. Cities have different rail hubs around them. And if you cut rail lines, then you prevent units from moving across those lines. But assuming you have a clear railway path to where you're trying to go, you can spend a little bit of your economic money to shift troops around on your front, which I think does a really good job in this sense of modeling World War I, even better than World War II. Because if the Russians are breaking through in the east, and I've got almost all my forces deployed in the west, I can spend a bunch of money to rail troops to the Russian front. I probably shouldn't rail them to the front line because they will not be super effective if they jump off a rail car and they take a bullet to the head. But they will be effective if I set them up in kind of a rear echelon area, let them get ready, and then go into war. So this idea of really representing the industrialization of a world war, I think is done in a really effective way by the way they handle rail transfers between fronts, and frankly also the economic impact. If you're transferring hundreds of thousands of troops from one spot in the country to another, that's going to have a huge economic impact on you, and it's represented by the fact that it's not free to do. But I think they do a really good job of that.
I just have one comment about the user interface. I think that it does a good job of displaying information, but I will say that the actual interactions, the interface itself is so archaic. I mean, it took me a long time just to figure out that you need to right click or you have to hit spacebar to deselect a unit. The movement scheme is left click to grab a unit, but then also left click to move a unit, which means that if you have one unit selected and you accidentally misclick next to the unit you want to select, you just moved the wrong unit. What's worse is the undo button only works if you haven't unselected the unit that you want to undo them. It only works on the very last movement that you did, which is fine. But if you just accidentally click, let's say you misclick and you move them, and then you right click because you're like, no, I don't want to do that, or whatever. Now you can't even undo what you did. So there's some clunkiness there. It takes a little bit of getting used to. I still find myself getting frustrated every now and then by doing something I can't undo, which I did not even want to do. And I don't know why people nowadays, I think it's basically become like driving on the right-hand side, that left-click selects and right-click moves. Be nice to see everyone just kind of agree to that and move towards that. And I understand that we're in the backwards part of the hillbilly town in war games.
It's funny you say that though, Tortuga, because I didn't even think about it. I just assumed that's how it worked that way, because that's how war games have always worked. I think the left click right click thing is more of an RTS.
That's true, but I think most games I know now that are coming out have moved to that, even the war games. So AJOD's title moved to it. If AJOD's moving to it, we didn't mention it specifically, but I will now. AJOD is the title that had that really clunky interface that was very hard to glean information from. So we can praise World War One for presenting information well, but even even AJOD's system of clicking and dragging, I don't know. It might be at least less error prone, if nothing else. And to get information, you have to right click on a unit. Or there is a little toolbar at the bottom that you can use, which I didn't see at first, but seeing a right-click Windows menu, you right-click and it's copy-paste, right? That's what you're used to in Windows. That's actually how you get information on units here, and that's just a little bit archaic. I don't expect that. It's a war game, right? It's it's just really a one-man project. That blows my mind if it is, but it's a very good game for only a one-man. I would have guessed this is at least a 5-man team. So huge props if this is actually a one-man effort. But yeah, it's a little backwards. I didn't like the interface. Maybe you expected it to be that way just because you've already played Strategic Command. It's not going to change from one engine. It's the same engine, right? So I'm sure that I don't know. It threw me off, and that's coming from a person who had not played Strategic Command before. But I played lots of war games, like Advanced Tactics Gold. A lot of other games, at least you press M to move, so there's not a way to misclick. It's pretty easy to misclick in this game. That's my experience, but I don't want to harp on it.